The morning of my graduation hadn't even begun, when the truth started pressing against my ribs like something trying to escape. Sleep wasn't the reason my eyes opened that early. It was the quiet heaviness, the kind that arrives after months of pretending everything is fine. But this part of the story isn't about the ceremony. Not yet. You asked where I'm listening from. I'm listening from a place I built after surviving someone I thought would protect me. But to understand the ending, you need every crack that formed before it. Because the truth is, Ariana didn't become my enemy overnight. She became my enemy in shadows, in whispers, in places I didn't look until it was almost too late. Growing up in her light, I used to think of Ariana as the sun, bright, warm, impossible to escape. At family dinners in Portland, she didn't just tell stories, she performed them. Arms moving, voice rising, making everyone lean in like she was gravity itself. I sat beside her quietly nodding, shrinking, learning how to fold myself into the corners, so she could shine without interruption. I adored her. Older sisters are supposed to be safe havens. Mine was a spotlight I was always standing just outside of. But something subtle shifted when I stopped being the quiet kid and started being someone. I worked harder, studied later, wanted things she never noticed, and suddenly the narrative of our childhood, Ariana the star, me the shadow, didn't fit anymore. By junior year, my grades edged past hers. Teachers noticed me. I won a scholarship. When I held that letter, my hands shaking with disbelief, Ariana hugged me. You said, Part 1 no heading, ChatGPT said. Here is Part 1 without any headings, fully expanded, cinematic, and flowing exactly like a professional long-form story. Part 2 will begin exactly from the last line. Part 1 teen. The morning of my graduation didn't start with sunlight or an alarm. It started with a heaviness that felt strangely familiar, like the weight of a truth I had been avoiding for months. I opened my eyes to the navy blue sky outside my window and knew, before even getting out of bed, that something was coming. A shift. A reckoning. But I couldn't have guessed just how public it would be. Before the chaos of the ceremony, before the chair scraped and Ariana stood up to carve into my future with one sentence. Life had been slowly fracturing in ways I didn't fully see until it was too late. People ask what it's like when the person you grew up idolizing becomes the person who wants to see you fail. The answer is simple and it doesn't happen all at once. It happens quietly, subtly, almost lovingly, until it isn't. Growing up, Ariana wasn't just the older sister. She was the golden child. She had a light around her that everyone seemed to orbit. At family dinners in Portland, she didn't just talk, she commanded the entire table. Relatives leaned in, eyes bright, waiting for her next story. I was always the one sitting beside her, nodding quiet, learning how to make myself small so she could take up all the space she wanted. I never resented her for it. I adored her. I watched her braid her hair, watched the way she walked into rooms like she already belonged to the world. I thought that was what love looked like, shrinking yourself so the person you love can shine. But that balance shifted the day I began to shine too. High school was the first crack. My grades surpassed hers by junior year. Teachers started calling on me more. When I won a scholarship, real, hard-earned, life-changing, Ariana congratulated me, but there was a look in her eyes that didn't match her voice. Something like strain. Something like a shadow. I ignored it. Sisters fought sometimes, sure. Sisters competed. I thought it was normal. College widened the distance. I left home for campus with nothing but a duffel bag, second-hand psych textbooks, and the kind of hunger for independence Ariana had once had but somehow lost. She stayed home after leaving her grad program abruptly. No explanation, no clarity. Just a slow collapse of direction she refused to talk about. Still, I didn't think it mattered. Different paths, different timing, that's all. But the first strange thing happened when my scholarship refund arrived short. Not by a mistake, level amount, by a noticeable one. A missing chunk. When I called the financial aid office, they gave a vague explanation, something about recalculations. Something that didn't quite fit. When I asked my parents if they had heard anything unusual, they exchanged a look. Quick. Too quick. A flash of something I didn't know how to name. Then the academic oddities began. a plagiarism complaint, filed in my name for an assignment I hadn't even struggled with. An appointment I supposedly canceled with Professor Hale, which I never even touched my calendar for. A tutoring accusation I had no memory of because it never happened. Small things at first, easy to brush off individually. Annoying, alarming, but survivable. But small things, when strung together by the same invisible hand, begin to feel like a slow constriction. Like someone dimming the lights in your life bit by bit, until you start questioning your own eyes. My roommate, Lena, noticed it before I did. One night, she stared at me as I kept refreshing my email and said quietly, "You're checking your phone like you're waiting for something bad." I didn't know how to explain that I wasn't waiting for bad news. I was waiting for a pattern. Waiting for confirmation that I wasn't losing my mind. And still, even then, I refused to believe Ariana would be behind it. She was my sister. The same girl who used to braid my hair before school. The same girl who taught me how to draw stars on notebook pages. How could she be the same person now orchestrating my downfall? Hope is blinding like that. It lets you walk straight toward the blow meant to crush you. The months leading up to graduation were like living inside a room where the walls kept moving. Each week brought something new. Another adjustment to my scholarship. Another notice about missing forms I'd already submitted. Then the moment that broke the last of my assumptions, getting locked out of my campus account for suspicious repeated login attempts. I stared at the error message, feeling the same rising panic you feel when someone quietly erases your name from your own life. Then came the meeting with Professor Hale. He called me into his office and folded his hands gently, like someone preparing to deliver bad news to a patient. "A complaint came through," he said. "They're accusing you of plagiarizing your behavioral analysis report." It felt like my lungs collapsed inward. That report had taken weeks, late nights, endless edits, cups of cold coffee, the kind of exhaustion that felt worth it. He must have seen the devastation on my face, because he raised a hand. "I don't believe it," he added calmly. "But someone wants this to stick. Be prepared." Prepared for what? A war I didn't start? A war I didn't even fully understand yet? Whispers followed me in hallways. Not loud ones. Just quiet, assessing eyes. A girl in my lab group avoided looking at me. A classmate named Evan looked at me like I was a forwarded rumor. Lena said softly one night, "You don't think someone's targeting you, right?" I told her I didn't know. But I did know. I just couldn't bring myself to admit who I suspected. The breaking point wasn't loud, but it was final. It was the night I opened my inbox and found an email, apparently sent by me, canceling a meeting I desperately needed for my capstone review. I read the email twice. The tone wasn't mine. The phrasing wasn't mine. Even the signature wasn't mine. But the consequences were, I sat on the edge of my bed in the half-lit studio apartment, hands trembling, scrolling through years of memories with Ariana. The snide comments disguised as jokes. The moments she dismissed my successes as luck. The bitterness she tried to hide when I started taking steps she never took. And in that haze of memories, something hard and sharp crystallized. This wasn't bad luck. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't school chaos. This was intentional. Someone was choreographing my downfall piece by piece. I went home that weekend and found my dad outside fixing the old fence he'd been promising to fix for years. He watered the hydrangeas like everything in the world was normal. "Dade," I began, heart pounding. "Has Ariana ever said something about me? About school?" He paused. Water dripped onto his shoes. "She's been tense," he admitted. "Said you get everything handed to you." It was a small sentence, but it landed like a blow. When I returned to campus, I made my decision. No more hoping I was wrong. No more pretending I didn't see the pattern. I contacted a tech investigator named Noah Vance, someone who could find ghosts in a machine. And within days, he found them. Timestamps, device IDs, login attempts, mirrored emails. One of those ghosts had Ariana's digital fingerprints all over it. That was the moment fear crystallized into resolve. Not rage. Not revenge, resolve. I was going to protect what I'd built. Even if the person I needed protection from shared my childhood, my memories, and my blood. Everything after that moved faster: proof, screenshots, logs, legal advice, a sealed envelope ready for the right moment. I didn't know that moment would arrive on the biggest day of my life. I didn't know Ariana would choose graduation to strike her hardest. I didn't know the whole auditorium would fall silent as she rose to destroy me. But I was ready. And when that moment came, everything I had gathered, every piece of truth, waited quietly beneath my seat. The car ride felt longer than it actually was. Every street I passed held some memory: late-night study sessions, early morning walks to the bus stop, afternoons spent working extra shifts while others my age were laughing in cafes or hanging out at malls. I pressed my forehead lightly against the cool window and watched the city wake up slowly, building by building, light by light. My phone buzzed again. "Mom, Betta, don't bring up old things today. It's your sister's big moment too. Let's keep everything positive, okay?" I stared at the message, my jaw tightening. They always said the same thing. Don't bring up old things. As if my entire struggle was just a minor inconvenience. As if the years I spent working 2 jobs, taking online classes at night, and collapsing from exhaustion were things I should politely forget. When the university gates came into view, my stomach flipped. Students in caps and gowns were taking pictures, hugging relatives, laughing loudly. The air buzzed with excitement, with accomplishment, with dreams coming true. I stepped out of the car and adjusted my gown. It felt heavier than it should. Maybe because I was carrying more than just fabric. I was carrying years of silence, resentment, and swallowed pain. My parents were supposed to meet me near the main hall. As I walked toward it, I spotted them before they saw me. They were standing with my sister, their faces glowing, their eyes bright with pride. Dad held a bouquet of expensive red roses for her, of course. Mom kept fixing the sash on my sister's gown, the same way she used to fix her hair before school. I slowed my steps. For a moment, just a moment, I watched them from a distance. Watched the way Dad laughed. Watched the way Mom's entire expression softened with love. Watched the way my sister leaned into them, confident, comfortable, assured she belonged. I'd never had that kind of ease. When Mom finally turned and saw me, her smile faltered, not out of dislike, but out of something worse: guilt she pretended didn't exist. Dad's expression tightened slightly, as if remembering something he would rather forget. My sister waved in her usual carefree way, cheerful, unaware of the sharpness hidden in small details. "Betta, you're here," Mom said, stepping forward with forced brightness. "You look so beautiful today." I nodded, keeping my voice steady. "Thanks." We started walking toward the ceremony hall together, but I kept a slight distance. I noticed how Dad clutched the bouquet tighter, making sure it stayed angled toward my sister. I noticed how Mom kept glancing at me, then looking away quickly, as if afraid of what might show on her face. The crowd grew thicker. Names were being called. Students were crossing the stage. Cheers erupted every few seconds. My heart thumped harder with each passing moment. As we reached the entrance, Dad said, almost casually, "We'll sit near the front, okay? We want a good view of your sister." There it was. Not even an attempt to hide it. I blinked slowly. "You want a good view of both of us?" I said quietly. Dad opened his mouth, then closed it again. Mom's eyes darted away. My sister shifted uncomfortably. But there was no time for a confrontation, not yet. We were being ushered inside. We took our seats. My parents sat on either side of my sister. I sat on the end of the row alone, as if fate wanted to make the separation visible. The ceremony began. My hands trembled slightly on my lap, not from fear, but from the storm brewing inside me. They had no idea what was coming. When they finally called my row to stand, a rush of air filled my lungs, sharp and cold, as if my body knew something big was about to happen. The line of graduates moved slowly toward the stage, one step at a time. A river of black gowns and nervous energy. I could feel my heartbeat in my fingertips. My parents were somewhere behind me in the crowd, probably chatting, probably focused on my sister who would be called after me. I wondered if they would even notice when my name was announced. The line inched forward. The bright lights on the stage made everything ahead of me look distant, almost dreamlike. Professors shook hands with each student, cameras flashed, cheers rose and fell like waves. I swallowed hard, adjusting my cap, forcing my shoulders straight. I had earned this moment. Every night shift, every tear, every hour of studying, when I could barely keep my eyes open. It had all led here. The student in front of me stepped forward as their name was called. Then it was my turn. My name rang out across the hall, clear and strong, echoing through the speakers. For a second, the world seemed to pause. I walked up the steps, the lights hot on my face, the applause washing over me like a sound I wasn't sure belonged to my life. But then something unexpected happened. The applause grew louder. Much louder. People I didn't even know were clapping harder, cheering, even standing. I glanced sideways, confused. That reaction wasn't normal. That wasn't polite clapping. That was genuine excitement, admiration, respect. The dean smiled as he handed me the folder. "Congratulations," he said warmly. "You've accomplished something remarkable." I managed a breathless, "Thank you." As I crossed the stage, a huge screen lit up behind me. It was displaying the achievements of the top graduates, something the university added this year. And there next to my name was a list of everything I had worked for. Completed degree while working 2 jobs, top 1% of class, recipient of Academic Excellence Award, paid her own tuition. The audience reacted instantly, gasps, murmurs, admiration. But nothing compared to the reaction from the front row. When I glanced toward where my parents sat, their faces weren't proud. They were pale, frozen. My mother's hand slipped off her lap, trembling slightly. My father leaned forward, staring at the screen as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. My sister's mouth fell open, her smile fading into shock. They had never known any of this. Never asked. Never cared enough to find out what I had achieved on my own. I kept walking, but inside me, something shifted, something powerful, something that had been waiting years to rise. For once, the entire room saw me for who I truly was. Not the daughter they overlooked, not the girl who had to fend for herself, but someone who had moved mountains alone. And my parents, they finally had to face it. When I returned to my seat, the whispers around me still buzzed, full of surprise and admiration. I sat down slowly, my breath steadying. My heart no longer trembling but rising with a quiet strength I had never felt so clearly before. My parents didn't look at me at first. They stared ahead, stunned, their expressions tight with something they couldn't hide anymore. Shame, realization, the sudden understanding that they had misjudged their own daughter. When my sister's name was finally called, they clapped. But the energy had changed. The enthusiasm wasn't there. Their smiles were thinner. Their eyes drifted back to me again and again, as if they were seeing me for the first time. After the ceremony ended, families gathered for photos. Students posed with flowers, balloons, and proud parents. My parents walked toward me hesitantly, almost cautiously. My father stopped a few feet away, his voice low, unsure. "Why didn't you tell us everything you did?" I met his eyes. "Steady. Because you never asked." The words hung in the air, heavy and sharp. My mother swallowed hard, guilt softening her features. "We should have been there for you," she whispered. "We didn't realize how much you carried." "You didn't want to realize," I replied gently, not out of anger but truth. "You made a choice, and so did I?" My sister stepped closer, her voice small. "I didn't know. I thought you were just studying normally, like me." I nodded. "I know. It wasn't your fault." For the first time in years, they all stood silently in front of me, my family, yet strangers to my struggle. The wind outside lifted the edges of my gown. Students laughed around us, taking photos, celebrating. But in our small circle, the world felt still. My mom reached out tentatively. "Is it too late to fix things?" I took a slow breath. "It's not too late," I said. "But it starts with respect. It starts with seeing me." Their eyes softened, relieved, humbled, hopeful. We took a picture together. But for the first time, I chose where I stood in the center, holding my own degree, knowing I had earned every piece of my future. As we walked out of the university gates, I felt lighter, freer, stronger, not because my parents finally understood, but because I no longer needed their validation to know my worth. I had built myself from nothing, piece by piece. And this was only the beginning.